Williams, our justice correspondent, has been working all of his sources in Washington on this story since first word arrived of these dual concussions in Boston. Pete, what can you tell us?
Well, it seems clear now that the authorities are still looking at packages that they find along the street of the parade route, or rather the marathon route in Boston, and if they can't resolve them immediately just by looking at them, they're destroying them. So we only know for certain, Brian, at this point, of 2 explosive devices, the 2 that went off that have been causing all the injuries, and what we know of the 2 fatalities so far. As you've been reporting, the possible 3rd one at the JFK Library turns out to be some understandable confusion in the chaos here. It was not an explosive device. Authorities are looking at and destroying several others, but it's not clear to us that they're destroying them because they know they're explosive devices, or simply because they just don't want to take the chance to use the vernacular. They just don't want to screw around with it, and if there's any doubt, they're going to blow it up. So we only know of 2 so far, and there have been there are many rumors, as you can understand. One was that the cell phone service had been shut down because of a thought that possibly these devices were set off, or a fear or concern that the devices might have been set off remotely by cell phone, which is a common technique around the country, around the world as well. But we haven't found any government official to confirm this, and we know that some cell calls are getting through, and one law enforcement official says it could be simply a matter that the system is overloaded, Brian.
Also, Pete, it's not giving away the nation's secrets. It's been written about. There's technology exists that was developed after the start of the war in Iraq that can go out on ahead of a vehicle and detonate by kind of sending a pulse out on all known frequencies, attempt to detonate explosives that may be along a parade route like this one.
Yes, and there are also devices, and this has also been written about, that are commonly used when high-profile people are traveling around, that can follow vehicles and sort of temporarily shut the cell service down in a small area. I've not heard of before the government, either local or federal, asking the phone company to shut down all cell service in an area, because of course the cell phones are also being used by first responders. Yes, they have their own radio systems and their own communication systems, but they also use cell phones a lot. So that would be a consequential decision to do that.
And as Pete points out, this conflicting report about the JFK Library, a good distance away, they did have a fire. It does not appear, based on all available information, to have been an explosion per se. It's certainly not associated or tied with the kind of explosions we've seen on Boylston today at the finish line. Yes, Pete.
As we're talking, AT&T has just issued a statement saying that customers may be experiencing issues with the cell service because of congestion, and they recommend that they use text messaging for emergencies. So they say our temporary Wi-Fi turned up for Boston Marathon will remain on for an extended time. So this seems to be the opposite of the suggestion that they were turning things off.
Okay, we just offered a Google Earth map there for folks, the basic outlines. You see the Presidential Library down at the far right-hand corner, the finish line upper left, and then to the upper right is Boston Logan Airport, for those who've traveled into and out of Boston. We have this from Tom Kenny, 43-year-old Army vet, recently returned from Afghanistan, had just finished running in the marathon today. Quote, "I was about 50 feet away. I had just crossed the finish line. We were entering the recovery area when the first explosion went off. We heard the noise. We felt a little bit of the percussion wave. It sounded like an IED. That was the first reaction I had." That is actually the definition of the type of device that it is feared and suspected was set off today, Pete, whether it's in a military or civilian setting.
Well, that's right, and I mean, you know, there's a lot of sort of informed speculation going on about the nature of the strength or size of these devices and what they might be composed of. I have not, the federal officials I've talked to have not seen any kind of definitive information on what these devices were, whether they were pipe bombs, what the explosive was, but there's a lot of sort of armchair analysis based simply on what can be seen and heard. The size of that picture there, the white smoke suggests perhaps a commonly used high explosive in a lot of terror bombs. But then, on the other hand, is, despite the number of injuries here, the relatively low strength of these devices in terms of what they might have been for a relatively small package. Not a lot of structural damage to the buildings that are adjacent there. So, I mean, I guess it goes without saying here that if this could be a lot worse, why these devices were composed the way they were, you know, was it a last-minute thing? Could they have made it bigger? Who knows? But that's just sort of informed speculation based on people who know about explosives who are watching the same scenes we are.
Pete, just to let the folks know, what kinds of federal agencies have offices in Boston? What kinds will be en route to Boston from Washington?
Well, the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives have offices there and are on the scene. In addition, they're both sending additional technicians to help with the investigation. They'll be the primary investigating agencies that will respond. Of course, Homeland Security has people there as well. But in terms of the initial response and explosives, and investigating and interviewing witnesses and helping the Boston police with this, those are the ones who'll be in charge.